You really cannot make this stuff up. Argentina are filing a petition in order to replay the final versus Spain. This level of entitlement is so Israeli pilled. You just can't make this stuff up. First of all, Israel, or rather Argentina, lost fair and square. In fact, the referee was almost, lenient towards the Argentinian team, disallowing a goal by Williams Jr. on the basis that there was some sort of scuffle, there was somebody who stepped on someone's shoe, but actually upon replay this was really not any kind of meaningful foul, and yet the Argentinian team was saved by the first actual goal. And the play styles between Spain and Argentina were different, completely different. Spain were playing a game of football, whereas Argentina were playing a game of American football. Like literally, Enzo Fernandez barged into one of the players, had him fly into the air, do like some sort of 360 extreme sports kind of dive, because he really wanted to win the game. And this led to a red card because in the previous iteration of his misbehavior, he engaged in simulation, which is essentially crying foul when, of course, he's just playing wolf. He's just crying wolf. So this is very much aligned with the Israeli playbook. They're entitled to win, and therefore, they will do whatever is necessary to win. Only that football has its own rules. You're not playing. There's a reason why handball is a foul, and yet Argentinians will tell you that simply touching the ball doesn't discount them from holding it to the hand and shooting it to the goal, because of course they wanted to win so badly. But it's not just that. We wanted Spain to win because they are not Zionist or anti-Zionist to some degree. I mean, the way they played, was highly commendable. They had possession and they tackled fairly and squarely. They didn't ram into people, and we wanted Spain to win for many reasons. It wasn't just because they're anti-Zionist that and despite that they're anti-Zionist that they fouled and they played with a degree of illegitimacy. Actually, they played very well despite that. So they played very well. They did not give in to what the presenters called the physicality of the Argentinian team, which is ridiculous. Physicality is not a play style. It's aggressive physicality is not a play style. It's simply fouling. So when the presenters gave the Argentinian team a degree of plausible deniability, they said, you had the well-controlled Spanish team. They're playing game of control and possession and taking goals, and versus the Argentinian play style, which is more physical, more aggressive. Actually, no, they're just fouling. That was a play style. They were getting frustrated and they fouled, and this was made evident when the Zionist thugs, which are obviously, I must separate, the Argentinian team from the action of Israel, because of course the action of Israel is far worse. But Argentina, the team and the players, the way that the government operates and the consensus of the population, it all comes together to a pro-colonialist mindset. Let's not forget this heavily Zionist leader of the country, Javier Milei, it literally professes to lick Netanyahu's bum, and yet you have Argentina's still are in favor of him or support him, And yet, obviously, there are Argentinians who are against this kind of cultural racism, colonialism, and I commend them. But the sort of players on the football pitch, the sort of the culture of physicality, which is thuggery, is essentially not what we want to see in politics and or on the pitch. But it's kind of an extension of the racism, of the deep innate racism of the Argentinian team. I mean, their football slogans, their football chants are very racist to begin with. They're telling that Jude Bellingham or Mbappe are not actual French or Englishmen. They're actually from Angola or Ghana. Only that they are born into the countries in which they're playing for. So there's a degree of racism that's ingrained in the Argentinian experience, which obviously one must have empathy for the Argentinians who are at the mercy of this. Of course, we can't paint everyone with the same brush, but the fact that Argentinian team, when they lost, they started engaging in a degree of essentially physicality, essentially trying to beat up the Spanish team. I saw Paredes throat slam into the Spanish captain. The physicality of the game transferred into the physicality of the post game, and I guess the presenters would have called it, oh, they're hungry for it, they're physical, they're aggressive, but they're physical. It's just thuggery, it's assault. It's something that should be punishable criminally speaking. And I think that the FIFA World Cup, FIFA establishment should investigate this, should ban some of these players. And I don't think they will, because of course the FIFA organization is corrupt. Innately corrupt, and it was clear when Argentina was playing Egypt, when suddenly they used VAR to disallow a goal because of a certain foul which wasn't even given by the referee to begin with, but they wanted to disallow the goal as a way to pave the way for Argentina. Of course, there is a degree of bias here, with Argentina, having gained favor from Netanyahu and Trump, both obviously in favor of the leaders, the Argentina's leaders, Javier Milei, this fucking insane psychopath who's very much a free market fundamentalist, which is essentially saying, get democracy out of the way of the profiteers. That's what free market means to the capitalist. Get any regulation, any democracy out of the way of the big corporations, the big businesses, so that the rich can get richer and the poor gets poorer. And you will see at the time that the poor will get poorer with the cutting of social benefits, and yet the rich will get the social safety net that they want, not what the people on the grassroots level, the one that businesses depend on, need. So that's the degree, that's the kind of world we're living in, and you have a degree of ethnocentrism, racism ingrained into the Argentinian kind of mentality, the culture, the politics, and this is reflected in the team. And so when Argentina lost fair and square, in fact they were given favor by the referee by the disallowing of a Spanish goal, and disallowing of fouls that were ignored by the referee. Despite that, you have 60,000+ votes for this poll to have the game a kind of a retake of that game, and it's ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. It's a waste of time. It's not going to be taken seriously, but the kind of the entitlement that you see is very much Zionist pilled. It's very much Israeli pilled, and I have no doubt that the two countries have some sort of a deep, political, cultural, and even militaristic connection. And we'll see more of this as we hear Milei, the Netanyahu ass-kissing politician, wants to kind of build more of a bridge with Israel. But isn't it funny? But the state of Israel, those who defend Israel say that it's a hand of God that protects Israel, and yet those countries that are in support of Israel are invariably losing, which means that this interventionist God that you've invented in your brains perhaps doesn't exist. I believe in God, but I don't believe in this interventionist Zionist God that exists, that defends one people over other people. I would imagine a true God, a just God, would take the side of anyone who's good. The actions of an individual matter more than the political organization of a so-called ethno group. It's all an invention of self-serving, narcissistic old men. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. That'd be very much appreciated. Thank you.